Listen, you hear that? That little hiss coming from the bathroom. That soft trickle that kicks on for no reason in the middle of the night, runs for a bit, then shuts itself off. You have walked past it 100 times. You have jiggled the handle and told yourself you would deal with it later. Here is what nobody tells you. That sound is money. A toilet that runs like that can pour close to 200 gallons of water down the drain in a single day. Not a leak you can see, not a puddle on the floor, just water slipping quietly from the tank into the bowl and straight out to the sewer, and your water meter spinning the whole time while you sleep. Now here is the good news, and I mean it. Almost every running toilet on Earth comes down to one of 3 cheap parts sitting inside that tank. Not a new toilet, not a busted pipe in the wall. 3 parts, and the most expensive one runs you about $15. You can fix this yourself at the kitchen sink if you had to, in about the time it takes to watch this video. So today, I am going to give you the 3 reasons your toilet keeps running, and the permanent fix for each one. Not a patch, not a jiggle. The real fix that makes it stop and stay stopped. Number 3 is the sneaky one that fools most folks. And stick with me all the way to the end, because I have got a bonus at the finish that costs you nothing at all. And it is the one thing almost nobody ever thinks to check. Let me tell you where I am coming from, so you know this is not guesswork. I have been turning wrenches for a little over 30 years. I learned most of what I know from my Uncle Ray, who could walk into a house, stand in the hallway, and tell you what was wrong with the plumbing before he ever opened a door. He used to say the toilet is the most honest thing in the house. It tells you exactly what is wrong if you just know how to listen. And a running toilet is the loudest complaint of them all. Here's the other thing Ray taught me, and it is the whole reason I make these videos. A running toilet is a 15-minute job. 15 minutes. But if you call a plumber out to do it, you are going to pay somewhere between $150 and $250 for that 15 minutes, most of it just for him pulling up to your curb. I am not here to sell you anything. I do not have a product. I just cannot stand watching a good person pay $200 and a fat water bill for something a $5 part fixes. So let us fix it. Before we start, real quick, let me show you the inside of that tank, because the whole thing makes sense once you see how simple it is. Take the lid off. Set it somewhere safe. That lid is heavy porcelain, and it does not bounce. Now look inside. You have got a rubber flapper at the bottom. That is the big piece sitting over the drain hole in the middle. When you push the handle, it lifts up, dumps the water into the bowl, and drops back down to seal. You have got a chain running from the handle down to that flapper. You have got a tall, skinny tube standing straight up in the middle. That is your overflow tube. And on one side, you have got the fill valve, the tall part, with a float on it that refills the tank after every flush and shuts off when the water gets high enough. That is the whole machine, 5 parts. And when your toilet runs, one of them is misbehaving. Let us find out which. Number 1, and this is the big one. This is the cause about 8 times out of 10. It is the flapper, that rubber seal at the bottom of the tank. Here is what happens. That flapper is made of rubber, and rubber does not live forever. It sits in water its whole life, and over the years it hardens up, it warps, it gets stiff, and loses its shape. Sometimes the seat it lands on, the ring around the drain hole, builds up a crust of minerals from your water. Either way, the flapper stops sealing perfectly, and once it stops sealing, water starts sneaking past it, out of the tank and down into the bowl. A slow, silent seep. Now your tank does not know why the water level is dropping. It just knows the water is low, so the fill valve kicks on to top it back up. Then it seeps out again. Then the fill valve kicks on again. That is your phantom flush. That is the toilet that runs for 30 seconds every 10 minutes for no reason anybody can see. The flapper is leaking, and the tank is bailing itself out around the clock. Here is how you know for sure. And this is a trick my Uncle Ray showed me 40 years ago, and it has never once been wrong. You do the dye test. Take a little food coloring from the kitchen, or a toilet dye tablet if you have one, and drop a good bit into the tank water. The tank, not the bowl. Now walk away. Do not flush. Go get a cup of coffee. Come back in 15 or 20 minutes and look in the bowl. If there is color in that bowl and you never flushed, then water is leaking from the tank to the bowl, and your flapper is the reason. Plain as day, it cannot hide from the dye test. So what is the permanent fix? A new flapper. And I want you to hear me on the word permanent, because a lot of folks try to clean the old one or bend it back into shape, and it works for about a week, and then you are right back here. Do not do that. A flapper costs you $5 to $10 at any hardware store. Just replace it. It is the cheapest peace of mind you will ever buy. Now here is how you do it right, and pay close attention to this next part, because this is where most people mess it up. First thing, before you touch anything, you shut off the water. Look down at the floor behind the toilet and you will see a little valve on the supply line. We call it the stop. Turn it clockwise until it stops. Then flush the toilet and hold the handle down to let all the water drain out of the tank. Now the tank is empty and dry, and you are working in a clean space instead of fighting a tank full of water. The old flapper just unhooks. It has got two little ears that snap onto pegs on the sides of the overflow tube, and the chain unclips from the handle. Off it comes. New one goes on the same way. Snap, snap, clip the chain, done. But here is the one thing that trips people up, and ask me how I know. You have got to match the flapper to your toilet. There are a handful of different sizes and shapes out there, and a lot of folks grab a generic universal flapper off the shelf, slap it on, and it does not sit right on the seat. And then they are standing there, scratching their head because they just replaced the part, and the toilet is still running. I have made that exact mistake myself early on. Spent a whole afternoon convinced I had a bigger problem, and it was just the wrong flapper. So before you go to the store, look at your old one. Better yet, snap a photo, or find the model number stamped inside the tank up near the back. Match it. A $3 flapper that fits beats a $10 one that does not, every single time. That mismatch is the #1 reason a fix still leaks. And now you know to dodge it. Get the right flapper, seat it clean, and that leak is gone for good. That is #1 handled. Real quick, before we get into #2. If that flapper fix just saved you a service call, do one small thing for me and tap subscribe on the Vintage Pipe Fitter. It costs you nothing. Every week I walk through another real repair like this one, the kind that keeps your money in your pocket. Then when something in your house acts up, we are already right here, waiting. All right, #2. And this one is so simple, it is almost funny, but it fools people all the time because they are hunting for something complicated. It is the chain. That little chain runs from your flush handle down to the flapper, and it has got to be set just right. Not too tight, not too loose. There is a Goldilocks spot, and if you are off in either direction, your toilet runs. Let me tell you both ways it goes wrong. If that chain is too long, here is what happens. You flush, the flapper lifts, and when it comes back down, the extra slack in that chain can slip underneath the flapper and get pinned there. Now, the flapper cannot close all the way because it is sitting on top of its own chain and water pours past it constantly. Sometimes, it is not even the whole chain, just a link or two sneaking under the edge, and that is enough to hold it open a crack, and a crack is all it takes. Now, the other way. If that chain is too short, it is pulling up on the flapper even when the handle is resting. It is holding the flapper just slightly off its seat, so it never fully seals. And again, water seeps through. Too long, it gets caught open. Too short, it holds itself open. Either one keeps you running. The fix here does not cost you a dime most of the time. You are just setting the slack right. You want that chain to have a little bit of play in it when the flapper is closed. Just a little. My rule of thumb, and Ray's before me, is about a ½ inch of slack, enough that the chain is not tugging on the flapper at all when it is at rest, but not so much that it can flop under and get pinned. If your chain is way too long, you do not even need a new one. Just hook it a few links higher on the handle arm, or snip the extra off with a pair of pliers so it cannot reach under the flapper. If a link is rusted or the chain is falling apart, a new one is a couple of bucks. But usually, you are just adjusting what is already there. Test it by flushing and watching. Push the handle, let it go, and watch that flapper drop and seal clean. Then listen. Silence. That is the sound of a chain set, right? Simple as that. Number 2, done. And it probably did not cost you a thing. Number 3. This is the one that fools the most people, and I saved it for the middle on purpose, because once I explain it, you are going to slap your forehead and go, of course. This one is the fill valve, and really it is the float that rides on it. Remember that tall part on the side of the tank with the float? Its whole job is to refill the tank and then shut the water off when the tank is full enough. The float rises with the water, and when it gets to the right height, it tells the valve, okay, we are full, shut it down. But here is the trouble. If that float is set too high, the valve lets the water keep rising, and it rises right up over the top of that overflow tube, the tall, skinny tube in the middle. And once the water is higher than the overflow tube, it just spills down inside it, straight into the bowl, forever. The fill valve never shuts off because the water can never actually reach the shutoff point. It is trying to fill a tank that literally cannot get full because the extra is draining down the overflow the whole time. Here is how you spot it, and it is dead easy. Take that lid off and look at the top of the overflow tube. Is there water trickling down into it right now, with the toilet just sitting there doing nothing? If yes, your water level is too high, and this is your problem. There is even a little mark to check against. Most overflow tubes have a fill line stamped or printed on them, and your water should sit about an inch below the top of that tube. If your water is right up at the rim or spilling over, it is set too high. Now the fix, and you have got a couple of options depending on how old your toilet is. On most newer fill valves, the float is a plastic cup that rides up and down the shaft, and there is an adjustment on it, usually a little screw or a clip on a rod, that lets you set the height. You turn that screw to bring the float down, which brings your shutoff point down, which drops the water level below the overflow. Costs you nothing. On the older style, where the float is that big ball on the end of a long brass rod, sometimes you can gently bend the rod down a touch to lower the float, and that will do it in a pinch. But between you and me, if that fill valve is more than 10 years old, or it is being stubborn and will not hold an adjustment, do not fight it. Just replace the whole fill valve. A brand new one runs you about $12 to $15, and it drops in from the top of the tank in about 10 minutes. Same drill as before. Shut off your stop, flush to empty the tank, unscrew the old one, drop the new one in, and set your height. A fresh fill valve is quiet, it is accurate, and it will outlast the last one by years. That is number 3, put to bed. Now I want to add one more thing here because I promised you the permanent fix, and I would be doing you wrong if I left this out. Once in a while, you do everything right. New flapper, right size, chain set perfect, water level good, and it still seeps. When that happens, the problem is not the flapper. It is the thing the flapper lands on. That is the flush valve seat, the ring around the drain hole at the bottom of the tank. Over a lot of years, that seat can corrode or crack or get pitted and rough. And once the surface is chewed up, no flapper on earth is going to seal against it. It would be like trying to close a screen door on a warped frame. The lasting fix for that is replacing the flush valve, which is the whole assembly, the drain, and the overflow tube together. Now, I will be straight with you. This one is a bigger job. You have got to disconnect the tank from the bowl to get at it, because the flush valve is held in place by a big nut underneath the tank. It is still absolutely a job you can do yourself on a Saturday morning, and the part is only around $10 to $15, but it is a step up from the others. So if you have swapped the flapper and it still leaks, and that seat looks rough when you run a finger around it, that is your answer. Do not keep buying flappers hoping the next one seals. Fix the seat. Okay. You stuck with me to the end. So here is the bonus I promised you. And this is the one almost nobody ever checks. I have watched experienced handymen miss this one. It costs you nothing to fix, and it drives people absolutely crazy because everything looks fine. Look inside your tank at that overflow tube again. Now find the little thin tube, a skinny, flexible one, that runs from the top of the fill valve over to the overflow. That little tube has a job. During the refill, it squirts a small stream of water down the overflow tube and into the bowl to refill the bowl back to the right level after a flush. That is normal. That is supposed to happen. But here is the trap. That little tube is supposed to clip onto the top of the overflow tube and just spray down into it from above. It should never, ever be shoved down inside the overflow tube below the water line. And you would be amazed how often it is because somebody bumped it, or it slipped out of its clip, or whoever installed it just jammed it in there. Here is why it matters. If the end of that little tube is sitting down inside the overflow, below the water level in the tank, it can start to siphon. The tank water finds a path right through that tube and pulls itself down the overflow, quietly, continuously. And your fill valve runs and runs trying to keep up. You will chase your tail forever because the flapper is fine, the chain is fine, the level looks fine. It is that little tube siphoning your tank dry. The fix takes you 5 seconds and costs you nothing. Pull that tube up so it sits above the top of the overflow. Clip it to the rim with the little plastic clip that came with it, and make sure it just points down into the opening from above without dipping inside. That is it. Siphon, broken, toilet, quiet. And you just solved the one that even makes seasoned guys scratch their heads. Ask me how I know. I check this one first now. So the next time that toilet starts whispering to you in the middle of the night, you know exactly what it is saying. Drop the dye in the tank, check your chain, look at your water level, and glance at that little tube, 5 parts. $15, tops. 15 minutes of your time. And you keep the $200 and the water bill right where they belong, which is in your pocket. Take care of that house. It will take care of you. That is the whole thing. 3 cheap parts and 1 little tube most folks forget. Thank you for spending this time with me. If any of it helped, subscribing to The Vintage Pipe Fitter is the easiest way to say so. I put out one honest fix every week, plain talk and no upsell. The kind of know-how that takes years on the job to learn. I will see you on the next one.